YouTube channel. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and for our number one episode, today we want to talk about, and this is going to be an outstanding issue no matter what, the continuation of the Pac-12 media deal and some of the issues that we're running into as they're looking to either expand, stay the way they are, or they decided they're going to move right along and just fall apart. Today I want to talk about something that I don't think I've seen, and so I'm really trying to hone in on stories that other people aren't necessarily tracking. And one of those is within the contracts, these media deals have these grants of rights, and they land on multiple years. They could be as short as 3 years, or they could run as far as 20, which is what the ACC had done. And in these grant of rights negotiations, we're talking about shares for media value. And one of those things that I don't think I've seen almost anybody talk about, but it's been something that's been sitting in the back of my head, is the total value for these contracts and whether you should get a half share, a quarter share, a full share, 3/4. You could really break it out however you want. But right now, everybody normally joins at either a half share or they join at full shares when they're going between conferences. The Big 12 right now is bringing people in at half a share. So that would be UCF, BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati are coming in at a half share until 2026. And then they'll be getting the full share of the $31.7 million contract that they agreed to last fall, that Brett Yormark was able to negotiate and sort of slipped in under the radar and scooped the Pac-12. Well, as we talked about the Pac-12 possibly blowing up, or at least in some way changing significantly, one of those things is that they're talking about doing possibly full shares for editions of Oregon and Washington if they decided to come in, or for that matter, the Four Corners schools, they could come in at a half or full share. And the thought is that Brett Yormark might be really playing inside pool, and he's trying to scoop, and I don't want to say blow up the Pac-12, but he definitely has a modus operandi that he wants to get in and do the best for the Big 12 that he possibly can. At the same time, you have a potential of 2 to 4 schools coming in on the West Coast, or sorry, on the East Coast. That would be any number of mid-majors: Gonzaga, Villanova, UConn, St. John's. There's a lot of different schools that we could pick up. And one of those things that really stands out to me is, do you bring in a full share but for a reduced price for basketball-only schools, or do you go half price but they get a larger portion of the revenue, meaning not just basketball money? And some of the things that I've been following as we've gone through these ups and downs, as we like to call the Pac-12 media days of our lives, is what if they decide to bring in the Four Corners schools, or University of Washington and Oregon, or we just talked about many options over and over again, or other schools at a full versus a half share revenue model. And I really believe that if Brett Yormark is thinking outside the box, and we're talking about moving down the line and doing the best for the Big 12, why wouldn't you bring in an Oregon and a Washington at a full share? There's a good chance that they don't even stick around longer than this next contract cycle, which ends in 30-31. Bring them in at a full share. Who cares? What's the ego to bruise? Bring it in, and once they're in, the value of the media deal will go up. And I know we've seen differing reporting that says that they're going to leave right away if they join. They could even leave as close to a year or 2 year. But in the meantime, Brett Yormark will be able to renegotiate, and this is just my personal opinion, but renegotiate that media deal that is currently sitting out there with Fox and ESPN, and bring him in for a short-term gain. If they only come in for 3, 4, 5, whatever the short term is, it will enhance the Big 12. It will make the Big 12 that much better, and it could potentially add to restructuring of the current deal. But who knows if the dollar amount's high enough? Who's to say that there's not a potential? And I have no intelligence from the outside world to say this is even an option. But just thinking outside the box here, if Brett Yormark negotiates a separation agreement to bring in the big UW and OU, they could come in and for just a very short-term gain, and maybe that bump that they provide is permanent, and that increase stays with the Big 12. In addition, you bring in the Four Corner schools, and I think there's a thought that if they join just like the schools that are joining this year, the BYUs and Cincinnati's and Houston's and UCF's of the world. And I realize there's an ego hit. And being a BYU main, I am not immune to that thought that if they come in, could there be a short-term, which would at this point only amount to 2-year revenue gap, to have them come in as sitting P5s and give them a full share. Again, I'm thinking down the road. I'm thinking long term. Why not do that? Because at the end of the day, the entire conference will do better. The Big 12 will be more stable, and the revenue will go up for every team, not just the teams that are brought in. So what I'm looking for is a discussion. I'm looking for a conversation with all of the fans that are out there, the fans of BYU, the Big 12, for that matter, the Pac-12, and find out kind of what is your appetite for something like this. I can't ask enough for support. This channel's just getting started, but I've been around sports my entire life, and this last 9 months has been an education in media negotiations. I've sat at the lap of Bob Thompson. I've had many offline conversations with him, and I've learned a lot. And I don't think that you have to be an industry expert to really get an idea of what that's going to look like moving forward for the Big 12. And at the same right, the conversation could be held with the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is desperate right now, and I'm going to use that word desperate to stay together. Even if teams leave, there's going to be a thought that that conference is currently still a P5. They could go for the next 2 years. They could keep that P5 status. They could bring in several schools from the Mountain West. You put a conference together with Boise and San Diego State and Air Force and Colorado State. I would even suggest UNLV. And there's going to be eyeballs on those schools. Now, is it going to be anywhere near what it would be with the Four Corners and University of Washington and OU? No. And I don't think anybody would even posit that as a guess. The Pac-12 would basically be the Mountain West 2.0, and it would be at a lesser share to the media deal. But for the Washington States and the OSUs of the world, I'm not sure that they have a different option. I can't think of any other way that they could go about handling their media deal except for to renegotiate a larger deal based on these additional schools that'll be in that used to be quote unquote P5 permanent, and see what you can come up with in 2 years of operations. And this is something I want all of you, my listeners, to contribute, leaving notes, leaving feedback so that I can take that information, put together another call where we can discuss exactly those thoughts. What does OSU and Wazoo do? What does the Pac-12 do with the media right share? I really believe that their media right share, if they're going to bring in at least San Diego State and potentially an SMU or Fresno at a full share. I don't think they have both those schools have all the power right now, and the Pac-12 might be desperate to bring them in at a full media share. It'll be in the overall, it'll still be less than they could have ever gotten as the contiguous Pac-12 as it is now, but at least they would be around and they could keep some sort of a semblance of respectability with those schools that are either in it already or could be joining. And they ended up turning around, renegotiate a new deal that they're talking about now, and that participation would go up and the media revenue would go up. I'm not sure what kind of grant of rights they would get with those schools. They don't want to be on the hook for much longer than 5 or 6 years, because that's when the Big 12 will be up for negotiation again, along with the Big 10. And the ACC's logged in, but the SEC, it absolutely would still be viable as one of the top two. And I would think that at the end of the day, being out of options, that would be better to have one option than none. So what I'd like everybody to do here is to contribute to putting in notes and comments on this video so that I can take the information that you guys are concerned about and turn around and put together a call in the next day. I would even do it this afternoon if we get enough people commenting to take this conversation further. How do you all feel about the media rights and the values that they present to these schools? Does the Big 12 bring in any Pac-12 school at a 3/4 or a full share? Does the Pac-12 bring in schools trying to stay alive and relevant at a higher share than they normally would be? What happens with the two schools which I haven't spoken about at all, which is Cal and Stanford? I think the farther down the line we go here, Cal and Stanford really only have two choices. They're not going to stay in a Mountain West 2. If the Pac-12 loses 6 schools, they're not going to want to stick around in just some rump of a conference, because as we've heard from all of the Pac-12 backers, the value is in the eyeballs and the people that are watching and their importance, their prestige, and not necessarily the media dollars. We've been told over and over again that media revenue doesn't matter. They don't really care. They don't need it. They have endowments in the billions of dollars, but they do care about their prestige, and they very much care about being in and at the top of the food chain, to the point where and again, this is everything I'm saying today. None of it sourced, but I could see them basically saying to the Big Ten, look, we don't really care at the end of the day about the media part of the revenue. What we care about is the prestige of our schools. And so what that means is we'll basically be willing to come almost at a free transfer and bring us in when you eventually do the next reorganization and bring in University of Washington, Oregon, if that indeed is what happens once the Big Ten gets a commissioner. I find it hard to believe they'd be left out just to wither on the vine. But it's more about the bragging rights than it is about the practicality of the revenue for those two schools. After all, they're 2 of the top 5 institutions in the entire world for education. And their research is, as we've heard 1 billion times in the last 9 months, their research is far superior to almost any other school. And they want to be part of that club. And I think they're basically going to say, we'll do whatever we need to move if you let us in. Now, will the Big Ten extend an offer? I can't even guess whether that would be on the table at all. The negotiations with Oregon and Washington, I think everybody was thinking they would be over. Holy cow! Like within 3 months of USC and UCLA leaving, I'm sure the world thought, oh yeah, for sure, they want to be travel partners with the two LA schools. They want to be part of that bragging, if you want to, for lack of a better term. They want to be in that conversation, whether they're relevant or not in their competition. They don't really care. So does the Big Ten bring them in? Maybe. Does the Big Ten say, no, we're not going to bring you in as a partner, but we'll support through scheduling. We'll support if you want to go independent. Yeah, I can see that happening. There's only a few schools in the entire United States that can go independent and succeed. BYU's proven it. Notre Dame is the lifetime independent. And I don't see a reason why Cal Berkeley and Stanford couldn't do the same thing. They have the support, and people would schedule them. And it's a lot of moving pieces to make a conversion work like that. BYU pulled off a miracle, but I don't know about Cal and Stanford. There's been so many different threads on that. I don't have a read on what's going to happen with those two schools. But I think there's a distinct possibility here that the Pac-12 ceases to exist as it is through some level of constituency. They're going to move to the Big 12 and potentially the Big 10. And it ceases to operate as a P5 within 2 years as we get to, 3 years as we get to 2026 when the new college football playoff contract is negotiated. I think P5 is an antiquated term, and I think we're really going to end up with four divisions right now, with the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 10. And my personal opinion is that we will end up, at the end of the day, we will end up in 3 super conferences. And the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC will basically carve up the ACC, and you'll end up with all 3 groups and only 3 conferences. And then what would happen is the rump of the conference, or the people that are going to be outside of a conference, they're going to put together what, and I don't know what you'd call it, but in essence, a participation trophy type conference that is right now the G5s. And you take the best of the G5s, those schools would bound together, and you would have a 5th sort of floating conference. But we're ways down the road on that. Mike Oresco has been the godfather of putting and cobbling together groups like that. I could easily see him, if he's still involved, to help spearhead some sort of a organization like that. But we're a ways down the road, and we're a long way away from us being able to find out really where that stands. So let's see. So we spoke about the potential media deals and shares, and I think that is really the ticker right now. I think that's the next piece of information we're going to get out. And I've waited and waited to really make this channel active based on knowing that this was going to be happening. And whenever it's announced, I'm really, really intrigued to see at what media share any schools that move they get, whether it's a half, 3/4, or a full, what the terms are for the GOR, which right now the remaining 3 or 4 conferences besides the Pac-12, their GOR are very strong, and what the out clauses will be potentially for any UW, University of Oregon migration. And I'm going to say it out loud, and I don't know why it matters. People are stuck on conferences. I think conferences as they stand as Congress is discussing NIL and as we're talking about revenue changing out in the world, conferences are they're a loose conglomeration of people that have similar values rather than being these edifices that, is that a word, edify that are out there, the monotheistic one way of thinking conferences. I think the days of that thinking are numbered. I certainly think by 2036, conferences are going to be something else. They might be called conferences, but their constituency is going to be set up differently. And I really believe that why shouldn't Brett Yormark think outside the box like he has with everything else, and really dive into bringing in Oregon and Washington, knowing that once they finally know the Big Ten's not going to bring him in at a full media share, and saying, we want to be your partner. We don't want to be in bed with you, and partner with us for 4, 5, 6 years. And then when the new media contracts come around, you're free. Go ahead and take off, because all we're talking about is playing football, basketball, and Olympic sport activities. It's not like you're getting married. And I don't see why we care whether it's all in or not. Doesn't bother me. And I think everybody else is going to eventually start to learn that for themselves. They're going to learn that conferences, while important, they're very transient, and these teams are going to be moving more and more frequently like free agents. And the world of the NFLs and the NBAs and Major League Baseball that says once you're in, you're in. I think those times are changing depending on demographics. Geography is part of it, time zones, people or students getting rest between activities in school. I think that's really going to drive a lot of that. And I think that we, as fans, just need to be prepared for that changing. Need to be prepared for and be a little more flexible in the reality that they deal in every day, and that is, let's go out, win some football games, get to the college football playoff, and then see what happens. And I think that's where we're at. That's my opinion. But I'd really like to hear your opinion. I started just like all the listeners here in really supporting the Big 12 once they decided to bring in BYU. That's not true. I supported the Big 12 when it was the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference, and I've always appreciated the schools that are in that middle area because they seemed very similar to me as a person. And I think that's why, and this will be a call for call for a different day, but I really want to drop into the psychosis that is BYU and why it's going to be such a home run for the Big 12. I think John Kurtz, I think Kuz Walker, I think Golden Blue guy, we're all in the same vein. We support the Big 12. We support each other, and I support them. I've supported their channels, and I would certainly hope that maybe they'll support ours along the way. So again, I'm going to ask for your support. I want you to put in comments. I want you to put in suggestions, story ideas, and I'm in it to win it at this point. We're going to make this conference and this Big 12 Mafia channel. It's basically going to be the same vein as the other guys, except for I'm going to have a BYU slant. I'm an unapologetic BYU lifer. Been a fan since '72. When I was 2 years old, my dad took me to a football game in what used to be the old stadium there in Provo. And I think it's really important that schools have representation. At the same time, I really support the Big 12 and what they've done for the BYU family, and really what they've done for schools that have been overlooked. and they were left for dead, and they've come back screaming from the grave. And I'm glad to be a part of that. And I want to contribute as much as I can to that success. So please subscribe. I want to reiterate what our Twitter channel is. It's at B12 Mafia. And I'm going to be quicker to respond in real time on Twitter, but I'm also going to be paying attention to all the comments and suggestions. And I really want to hear, especially from BYU people. I'm here, and I know we've got awesome support out there with Ben Criddle and other channels, but I haven't seen a channel like this before. I haven't seen one that's really dialed into the Big 12 specifically, and more importantly, all things BYU. Just as we're talking about me and my history, I'm not going to spend months and hours describing who I am. You're going to figure that out over time because I'm not going anywhere. But I've been a BYU fan my entire life. I'm a college football and college basketball fan. And I'm here for you. I'm going to have a rooting interest. I'm a cheerleader, and I don't apologize for that. I'm also not a media member. So don't come at our channel with anything that says, hey, what are your contacts? Give us your resources. You know, I have nothing to prove to anybody. I'm here for you, and I'm here for me. This is fun. And it's going to be more fun as we get more down the line. I'm a big supporter of everything that is happening in the Mountain West. I'm from Washington State, and so I've got Pac-12 blood in my veins. So I'm not just a one-trick pony, and I plan on covering all things collegiate athletics. But again, it's going to have the Big 12 and BYU at its figure. So please subscribe. Give me feedback, suggestions. I'm just getting into this, so I don't know how you guys are reading me. Am I talking too fast? I'm trying to stay slow and deliberate, but I'm also passionate, and I like to stay involved. And so you're going to get energy from me. Again, I want to reiterate that I feel a very big kinship to Greg Flugauer and Kuz Walker and Blue and Gold guy and Jonelle Kurtz. And I want to prop up their channels. I'm a big believer in what we're all doing, the services we're providing, and we want to be out here for you. And I just really want to see more and more of you each day. My next call, or actually maybe it might be in two. I'm actually going to go live. I've got a Venmo. No reason to read it to you right now. That'll be on my notes for the site. But any comments, suggestions, please subscribe. Please reach out to me at B12 Mafia. And as we go down the line here, I'm looking forward to interacting with all of you. I've been involved with you on Twitter. Now I plan on being involved on listening and hearing what you have to say, because I'm excited about this topic, and I really believe as we get down the line and we start interacting real time during calls, that we're all going to get better. I also want to say that if there's anybody that has suggestions or needs contributions for me, I'm here for you. I have a full-time job. I'm an engaged person, but I'm also somebody that is involved with everything we do. And I want you to know that you're part of the conversation. And please don't let that go by, that if I miss it and you feel like you're being talked to instead of conversed with, I've done something wrong, and I want to make that better. So I want everybody to have a great day today. Again, it's at B12 Mafia, and my Venmo is at NPB007. I'm taking all donations. This is a one-stop shop here, so I'm all by myself. That'll get better as we get to the live shows, and you'll be able to interact with me more as we go down the line. And I'm looking forward to that. And I can't wait for your help and support. And I wanna be part of your day. And lastly, I might not be doing one every day. For instance, this weekend, I've got to go to Washington for a birthday, but I'm going to be as active as possible, sometimes multiple times in the day. And I'm looking for your contribution and your support. I guess that's it. Everybody have a great rest of your morning and into early afternoon, and you might see me later tonight. Appreciate it. Have a great and safe day, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.